Ladies and gentlemen, the San Joaquin County Council of Governments meeting for February 27, 2025 is now declared open. Council, do we take a roll call? Okay, all right. Mayor Ariola, please lead us in the pledge.
Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mayor Kinjo,
Yes. Yes.
Mayor Arola,
Present.
Councilmember Craig. Here. Supervisor Dollywall,
Here.
Supervisor Ding,
Here.
Councilmember Ingo.
Here.
Councilmember Enriquez,
Here.
Mayor Fugazi. Present. Councilmember Ponce,
Present.
Supervisor Rickman,
Here.
Mayor Singh, Mayor Sue,
Here.
Councilmember Zuber,
Here.
Gary Giovanetti,
Here.
Grace Masayo,
Here.
Bill Trezza. We have a quorum, Chair.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is recognition and presentation. If the CEO, Madam Diane, can take over from there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to introduce Eric Lawston. Eric, if you can come to the podium. Eric Lawston is the managing principal of Hush Blackwell Strategies. This is the federal advocacy firm for SJCOG. For many of you who went to One Voice in May last year in DC, you met Eric and his team, which includes Lynn Jaquez, who's been with SJCOG as our lobbyist for over 2 decades. Eric is here to talk about what's happening in DC and what to expect in our May trip. So I'll pass it over to Eric.
Great. Thank you, Diane. Good afternoon. Appreciate the opportunity to appear before you all. It's a pleasure for me and my colleagues to represent the San Joaquin Council of Governments, and appreciate the opportunity to come share with you more about what we do and hopefully the resource that we provide to you and to your constituents. Next slide, please. So a quick overview on who we are. Hush Blackwell Strategies, or actually we're in the midst of a name change, so we are now HB Strategies, is a multi-state and federal bipartisan government relations practice that was established in 2018, initially with a federal office and 1 state office, and we have since grown to become a 13-office enterprise with the Washington, D.C. Office of Public Affairs component and 11 state offices spread throughout the country, not yet including California. Among our members of our team, we have people who have significant experience in the House and in the Senate, working in federal agencies and in other professions that are focused on federal affairs in Washington, D.C., including most recently joining our firm is former Missouri Senator Roy Blunt, who was a Senior Appropriations Committee member and a member of the Senate Republican leadership. You may be familiar with C.J. Lake and my colleague Lynn Jaquez. They had represented SJCOG for a number of years. Our firms merged together in 2023, and Lynn brought her clients, including SJCOG, to HB Strategies, and we now have the pleasure of jointly working on your behalf in Washington, D.C. And in addition to Lynn, a colleague of mine, Cooper Ehrenreich, is also on the team. Lynn has over 30 years of experience working in Washington, D.C., working on the House Judiciary Committee, and then also in private practice, both in terms of lobbying and legal representation. And my colleague Cooper had a few years in Washington, D.C., working on Capitol Hill, and then more recently worked for a rail industry trade association. For myself, I had 16 years working on Capitol Hill for 3 different members of Congress, as well as the Science, Space, and Technology Committee, and then spent 4 years working in the Federal Affairs Office for the Governor of Puerto Rico. I joined HB Strategies about 5.5 years ago, having about 20 years of public service prior to that point. Next slide, please. what we do for you is probably the most important question that we'll address today. You're lobbyists in Washington, D.C., and what does that mean? Well, I'd say that the foremost thing is for us to be aware of what's happening and to know what's important so that we can share that with you. We can identify sort of the wheat from the chaff. More than ever right now, there's a lot of activity in Washington, D.C. There's a lot of noise coming out of Washington, D.C. Sometimes the media gets it right, sometimes they don't, and our job is to make sure that we're providing to Diane and her team that critical information that's important to you all to be aware of what's happening and to be able to take smart and informed decisions about pursuing the transportation or other infrastructure needs that your communities in the county are looking to benefit from. We desire to keep you informed and share that information. Again, sussing out what's important, what's the notable items in the transportation space, grant opportunities, and to share that and to provide context and insight as to how that can occur. We have meetings every 2 weeks with Diane and her team to discuss these issues, let them know what's going on, work on planning for future events and applications, and to maintain that dialogue on a regular basis. Of course, if other issues arise, we're in touch by email or phone on a regular basis as well. We're also your advocate when there are opportunities coming up to pursue federal funding, to try to solve problems that may arise in the pursuit of federal funding or obstacles that may get in the way of some of your projects. That's what we're there for, to reach out to your congressional delegation, your senators, to people in the DOT and in the White House as necessary to try to learn information, identify what solutions are, and to help move opportunities forward. And then, of course, a variety of other activities like supporting the One Voice trip, and supporting other needs that you may have. Next slide, please. A couple of examples of items that we have been involved in that have been successes for SJCOG include securing federal funding through what's now called congressionally community project funding, or formerly known as earmarks, for the 99-120 corridor. That includes two separate earmarks, one for $5 million and another for $500,000. Working to secure earmarks for the Grant Line Road widening project. It included a $2.5 million earmark in 2023. The City of Tracy's recent successful grant application for the Rural Surface Transportation Program was part of the One Voice trip. Got a lot of visibility in the visits to Washington, D.C. over recent years, resulting in their successful securing of a significant $40 million grant for the Coral Hollow Road I-580 intersection. And then currently pending is a $250,000 earmark for the I-205 Managed Lanes project. That is pending because Congress has not yet passed its budget for the year. That funding was included in the House Transportation Funding Bill, but those have yet to be resolved. Next slide, please. I had the opportunity to meet a number of you last May when you came out for the One Voice trip. We felt that was a very successful trip. That was my first One Voice trip, although my colleague Lynn has helped support a number of those in the past. Most recently, we had over 70 of you and your colleagues come to Washington, D.C. for 4 days of meetings and engagement with a wide variety of stakeholders, including your congressional delegation, representatives from the Speaker of the House. Some of you went to the White House for visits. We had an array of different visits to various agencies at the Department of Transportation, including Federal Transit, Federal Railroads, Federal Aviation, the Build America Bureau, meetings at HUD and with the Economic Development Administration, the Department of Justice, the National League of Cities, and others. And we're actively working on planning this upcoming year's visit as well, and we look forward to seeing you all there. Next slide, please. But that is not the only aspect of what we do with respect to One Voice. We're also constantly in touch with your congressional delegation and representatives of various transportation agencies. Regardless of the politics or the president at the particular moment, we want to make sure that when we walk out of meetings, people don't say, well, that was really a Democratic meeting or that was really a Republican meeting. Our goal is to not wear any politics on our sleeve, to be there to be advocates for your projects and your priorities. And I think that we do a fairly good job of that and try to maintain and have succeeded at having good contacts regardless of who's president in the White House and in the other agencies. Looking ahead at the rest of this year and this Congress, The current federal budget expires on March 14th. That's a short-term budget extended a few times from the end of the federal fiscal year of September 30th. Surprisingly or not, politics sometimes get in the way of these discussions. It's not clear what's going to happen on March 14th. We may actually have a shutdown, although I think that that's unlikely. It is beginning to be talked about. Potential for another short-term extension or just a effort to sustain current funding at the current levels for the rest of this fiscal year, and then to start the next fiscal year's process at some point thereafter. As I mentioned before, we're also actively working on planning the upcoming One Voice visit in May. We'll begin scheduling meetings, and we've already sought to be securing some of the site visit opportunities that we've had in the past. And we're also looking forward on the appropriations process in terms of what projects can we support of yours moving forward and how we can best try to pursue funding for those opportunities. In 2026, the current federal transportation law expires. That's commonly known as the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law or the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, IIJA. Federal policy generally establishes a 5-year time frame for transportation legislation. These establish sort of the confines of grant programs and the funding that you and the states and other counties and cities rely on. So they'll take a fresh look at that and see what programs are moving forward. So we'll be advocating for programs that we think are important for SJCOG in that space as well. And then finally, just looking at the new administration and what we have to expect here, I will close with that. And if you'd like, you can bring the slides down now. You know, obviously, President Trump's return to office has been a little disruptive, and I don't say that with any prejudice towards him. It's just as though the federal government is a snow globe, and you shake it up, as every incoming president does, and you see where the snow settles. And currently, I think that snow globe hasn't stopped shaking for the last month. And you know, when the snow settles, it gives us an opportunity to reassess the landscape and identify, all right, what does this mean, and what are the best pathways forward for priorities for folks like yourselves? And it's a little harder to do when that is in a constant state of agitation. This is, I think, part of a strategy in order to keep people on their toes and to move forward with the president's agenda. And we will see where that ultimately lands. But I think it is our job to understand what's happening and try to find the best pathways forward. Generally, there have been assumptions about what the boundaries are of where politicians can go and where presidents can go. And President Trump has sought to defy those assumptions and do things that people have said, well, you can't do that. And they are testing the boundaries, and I think in a way that somebody who is not a historic or traditional politician would. And so it makes it a little more challenging to understand what the trajectories and the likely scenarios are going to be, but that's our job to put that critical thinking cap on and understand what the pathways are moving forward. In terms of transportation, I think that you're going to see a change in priorities from the prior administration, where they were focused on a lot of externalities of transportation, be it you know, environmental impacts or the impacts to groups, select groups of people. And now I think you're going to see much more of a direct impact perspective, be that what are the jobs going to be? What is the economic development impact going to be? How is this going to benefit an America First perspective? And I think that in your county, there are ways in which that may be beneficial, focusing on the value of your agriculture sector and how can we best get your crops and your products to market. And that goods movement perspective is going to be, I think, important. I think capacity expansion. Some of the efforts that you've had in the past with respect to I-205 have been, you know, somewhat stymied by concerns about air quality and the way in which you feather in transit, as well as adding additional lanes and capacity. And you know, some of this may not be as vital at this point in time, where you're focusing on what's the best and easiest way to move people to where they want to go. So I think that we're going to continue to evaluate that pathway forward and what's going to be the best line of argument in support of projects that you might propose. But at the same time, funding that may have been in the pipeline for some electric vehicle charging grants, for instance, are now possibly you know, going to be a bit more challenging to secure. This is not part of the president's priorities. And so we're going to have to keep an eye on what's going to happen with those particular areas of interest. But that said, we have good contacts in the Secretary of Transportation's office. We know people who had worked for the White House under Trump 1, and we know people who work in Trump 2. And so we'll continue to be effective for SJCOG and moving forward your priorities and the funding that you're seeking for projects that are vital to your communities. So I'm going to take a pause there and see what questions that you might have for me. But thank you for the opportunity to come and chat with you today.
Thank you, sir. Board members, questions for our speaker? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. Eric, thanks for being here. It's great to see you again, and thanks for all your help and you and your team over the years. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Real quick, you just kind of mentioned under the Trump administration, what type of projects do you see having more opportunities for funding? You mentioned 205, the air quality environmental side, but what about the efficient flow of traffic and the safety side of what we see on the traffic side?
Yes, no, I think the efficient flow of traffic is something that I think the president's particularly mindful of. I think you've seen that with respect to the recent issues with New York City and their congestion pricing effort, where their DOT and the White House are saying, well, get rid of that. People want to be able to drive to work and to get there in the efficient way that they feel is the best for them. I believe that they're going to be much more open to capacity increased adjustments. I'm not sure that safety has been a talking point or a priority of the president so far, but it does seem that Secretary Duffy has made a priority for transportation safety. His wife was injured a number of years ago in a fairly severe motor vehicle accident. And, in talking with somebody in the Secretary's office earlier, talking about some grant issues, he said, yeah, we're a little behind on this because, and of course I knew what he was talking about. It was the unfortunate plane accident in Washington, D.C., where I live. And so, I think that has put safety of all modes of transportation high in the minds of people at DOT. So making safety arguments are probably going to be important in advocating for your projects moving ahead.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Any other question? Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you again, sir, for your presentation. I know many of us are excited for DC, and for some of us, will be the first time going on this trip, and for some are veterans. But you mentioned this earlier in your presentation, and what would you say for us, since we are a mix of new and experienced electeds, is what would be the most important strategy for us in adapting to this new administration?
Yeah. Well, I think being genuine, coming in and talking about why you've determined to be in elected office or, part of a public body, why these transportation projects are important to your constituents and how they're going to help your economy and, people find opportunity are going to be particularly important priorities for how you justify what you're looking for. I think that trying to articulate the broadest possible benefits from that, and perhaps even bringing people from the business community to the trip to talk to the ways in which investment in transportation is good for the broader business community, I think would be a particularly good focus.
Thank you, Eric. Yes, Mayor.
Hey, Eric, thank you for coming today. How are you ensuring the delegation will be making the connections to the right decision makers in the midst of all the staffing changes?
Sure. Well, of course, you need to visit with your delegation, your senators and your congressmen, and perhaps also the others in the surrounding area. But we will make sure that we get you in front of some of the senior leadership from the House of Representatives, including staff from the Speaker of the House's office or the Majority Leader's office. We will endeavor to get high-level meetings at the Department of Transportation and ideally at the White House as well, so that regardless of politics, you're having the opportunity to convey your priorities and the importance of transportation in your community to those stakeholders, regardless of what the political situation may be.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I particularly enjoyed last year the opportunity we had to work together, but also we did take advantage of lobbyists that our Northern California Power Agency has while we were there. And it did make a difference. We could talk about multiple projects. but we could also be very specific on some of the projects that we were coming with in terms of our delegation. And we're coming again this year with our hydrogen hub project. So I was pleased to hear you talk about direct impact and jobs and economic development. I'm going to assume that we should have some of those figures at our fingertips to be able to talk about all of our projects in terms of not just, importantly, public safety, but also about job creation, the direct economic benefits as well as the indirect economic benefits that come from these projects. Is that the case?
Yes, very much so. And I would think that especially important for the hydrogen hub, because I think that there's, in the space of energy being infrastructure, a perception that some of the so-called clean energy projects are done for the purpose of being green, as opposed to being innovative opportunities that will, over the long term, create jobs, save you money, and may have some side benefits of being better for the environment. But I think turning perhaps the argument on its head to talk about the economic impact of jobs like that will be vital, as opposed to in the past, perhaps saying all the pounds of CO2 reserved or something like that being a vital aspect of your talking point. And certainly there's a lot of debate currently in Washington, D.C. about tax credits that were created to support clean energy in the past, and you have a lot of businesses coming now to argue in support of maintaining those because of that same feature, the business and the economic direct and indirect impact from those types of projects. And I think the same would hold true in the case of the hydrogen hub and the investments that you have in Lodi, planned for Lodi as well. And I think the One Voice project planning process, which sort of compels project sponsors to put together good information about their projects and the benefits, and helps create a good catalog of all of what's happening here in San Joaquin County, would be sort of a good starting point for all of that information that's going to be useful moving forward.
Thank you.
Board members? Yes, Mayor.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Loston. So you kind of touched briefly about the volatility that's going on in DC. And so we're hearing a lot about downsizing of particular agencies. Have you seen any substantial loss of contacts at any particular departments? And do you have a strategy on addressing that?
While that is certainly ongoing, I have not personally found that people I knew in the past have no longer been present at their jobs. But we're certainly seeing indicators that the impacts are real, both in terms of people losing their job opportunity, but also in the way that some agencies may be functioning differently. In one case, we work with a group that deals with the Animal Plant Health Inspection Service, APHIS. They're a user fee generated agency. The fees paid by businesses who need their certification or inspection services pay for the agency's function, but nonetheless, they have had personnel reductions already. And so we are concerned that throughput issues that were already existing at that agency are likely to get worse before they get better. It hasn't necessarily been a big feature at the Department of Transportation yet. There have been reductions at the FAA and at the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, which deals with the safety of automobiles. So it hasn't quite gotten to a point where we're seeing it at FTA or FHWA or some other agencies, but it's likely to continue to get into that space. So I think for us, it's identifying points of contact at the highest levels in the Secretary's office, or identifying people at the White House or allies in Congress who can help us navigate a slimmer agency and identify the people we need to find to get things done. In a certain way, trimming down the bureaucracy should mean that if you are trying to address the situation, you may have a quicker pathway, right? That if you were dealing with someone, say, in a regional office, they are going to have perhaps a few less layers between them and a decision maker in Washington, D.C. And so on one hand, you may feel as though there could be swifter action on the things that you're trying to get done. But on the other hand, with fewer people and presumably the same amount of throughput in the pipeline, that you're going to have sort of more work on individual employees' plates, which may cause delays. But I think through the variety of connections that we have at senior levels, that we should maintain our ability to get informed and to push for action on things that you find important.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Oh, I'll throw my 2 cents. Diane's like, please don't talk, Steve. I appreciate all the work you're doing for the new members that are going back to DC for the first time. To me, the most important thing Eric said was when he was talking about the secretary's wife having an automobile accident. It's making that connection. It's understanding when you're talking about mental health, and Wyden is the minorities member that his brother was locked up in a mental institution. It's understanding when you go into Roy Blunt's office, if you're a member of Kappa Alpha, that's really important. And it sounds kind of funny to you, but you've got all the experts in the world that know the details of all these programs. Eric and his team, they know every member. The staff directors, I hate to tell people this, but a staff director in DC's got more power than a congressman, if he's not already on a specific, unless he's an approps member, which Harder is, so Harder is very important to us. I guess what I'm telling you is, when you go back there, look through your packets and your meetings. Look who you're meeting with. Look at their bios. Where can you make a personal connection? That's how you get, that's our role. And then let the team do their role, and they can talk all the details and stats that I don't understand what they're saying, but I know they're beneficial. And let Eric do his job and point out who to talk to. And we'll all have a great trip in DC.
Thank you.
Any other board members wants to chime in? Well, Eric, thank you so much. Just one last thing for you to consider. Looking at what we have, present situation, like Supervisor Dean just reminded us, I have always said one of my roles is to know how to beg. You know, you can use advocacy, you can use all kind of fancy language but it's a begging work. We are begging. So what do you have to trade? Because that's the plan down there now. Do we have anything to trade, to receive from these guys?
Yes, well, I would say rather, I would put perhaps a finer point on it. I would say persuade. And it would be in the sense that, no, I don't think it's necessarily an exchange, but you're in a process of competition with other counties in California and other states and counties across the country. And it's an effort to assure the federal government that, A, that you have important projects that stand out among others, and that you will do well in fulfilling the federal government's desires to adhere to certain policies and to help your constituents out by managing projects effectively and efficiently. And I think that you have a good track record of doing so, and so demonstrating your past performance and the, extolling the virtues of your future projects would be the best way of going about that.
Thank you, sir.
Paul.
Yes.
Sorry. I just wanted to throw it out there, with the new president's seat. Do you see any effects coming in as a delegation here of, because we're from California, and that effect?
Yet to be seen, I would say. I would certainly, I think, while a number of Democratic governors have leaned in on being critical of the president during the campaign, some have sought to make amends or to see the president eye to eye. The governor of Illinois has continued in the sort of pathway of being on the campaign, of being very publicly critical of the president, and sort of taking up that charge, perhaps because of his fears of losing federal funding, perhaps for campaigns, for whatever reason. Governor Newsom has, fairly publicly gone and sought to directly engage the president. You saw the handshakes at the airport in Los Angeles, but you have not heard him being as outwardly or as loudly critical of President Trump and Governor Hochul in New York has seemingly taken up a similar approach. Understanding that, this is going to be a full 4 years, that we're 1 month into President Trump's presidency, and there are 207 more months to go. And so understanding what value there may or may not be in criticizing the president in the media when you have a lot to lose in terms of direct engagement and the priorities of the state. I think that in your dialogue with stakeholders, acknowledging that you're distinct from and apart from what people perceive to be California in the Bay Area or Los Angeles, that that you have a more rural community here, focused on community, agriculture focused, very diverse, but with sort of more temperate and diverse politics as well than what people assume California to have. And so I think that from that perspective, I wouldn't be as concerned about, having the license plates that you do on your car. Thank you.
That is interesting. All right, moving right along. This time for public comments. Did we receive any? I have not received any public comment cards, Chair. Council, could we request or just move on?
You can move on. You can move right along if there's nobody that's willing or that's desiring.
Okay. Thank you. We have the item number 4 is the consent calendar. Any items needs to be pulled by any members?
Motion to approve.
So we have a first and we have a second.
Mayor Kenjo,
Yes, ma'am.
Mayor Riola,
Yes.
Councilmember Craig, Supervisor Dollywall,
Yes.
Supervisor Ding, Councilmember Ingo, Councilmember Enriquez,
Yes.
Mayor Fugazi, Councilmember Ponce,
Yes.
Supervisor Rickman,
Yes.
Mayor Singh,
Yes.
Mayor Sue,
Yes.
Councilmember Zuber. Yes. Motion carries.
Thank you, ma'am. Item number 5 is an action item. Madam CEO, so somebody's here to take the item. Thank you.
I'm here for you, Mr. Chair.
Yes,
Ready
Joe.
to go? Okay, great. Well, it sounds like tonight we have a Washington-themed focus because I'm here to also speak about our One Voice program. My name is Joel Campos. I'm a senior regional planner here at San Joaquin Council of Governments for those new board members. And so next slide, please. We're just going to dive right in. Well, actually, before that, I'm going to go ahead and mention what the recommendation is because this is an action item. And so staff is recommending that the SJCOG board approve of the 2025 One Voice program of projects and updated federal legislative platform. And so although you heard a little bit about One Voice and the One Voice program, I'm just going to explain a little bit more. The San Joaquin One Voice program is SJCOG's federal advocacy initiative for San Joaquin County that promotes projects, programs, and issues of regional significance through an annual trip to Washington, D.C. And so as you see on the slide here, we have updated our federal legislative platform from previous years. We've consolidated our priorities into 4 areas of focus. And that's number 1, transportation, funding, and finance, economic development, the environment, and mega region or interregional infrastructure. And so more details of these priorities are available in attachment B of your staff report, but the gist of it is that this update was done to better align with the Trump-Vance administration while maintaining a strong connection to our program of projects. And so next slide, with that, I'm going to go ahead and walk you through the 12 projects that have been proposed for you to approve tonight to take with us to Washington, D.C. So first up, we have the city of Lathrop. They're proposing Louise Avenue I-5 interchange. This is an existing interchange. However, it's a dramatic change and improvement as it's considered, this upgrade's considered what we call a diverging diamond interchange, or DDI for short. And we'll get more into what a DDI is in a few slides from now, but I'm actually going to just go ahead and ask to go to the next slide and talk about this next project that we actually heard briefly about from HBS, and that's the City of Lodi's Energy Center Hydrogen Conversion Project. So this is a hydrogen production facility. It's off of I-5, adjacent to the City of Lodi's current water treatment facility. And so as we heard, it's going to bring a new source of energy, basically to Northern California, from my understanding, like north of Bakersfield, and new jobs and a lot of other direct and indirect benefits to the region. So next slide, please. We're going to get back to a DDI. So we have the city of Manteca here, and they're proposing the State Route 120 Airport Way Diverging Diamond Interchange. And so these are reconfigurations of existing freeway interchanges. Basically, they're safety improvements and allows for better flow of traffic. It reduces the number of collision points on both sides of the freeway. In this case, on the north side and the south side of State Route 120, there's already an existing example of what a DDI looks like if you've traveled along Union Road at 120, and so it looks like the city of Manteca and Lathrop are both, trying to, they see the success and they're moving forward with those type of interchanges. So next project. This is actually a new project. The other projects we're returning. This is from the city of Mountain House. This is the Mountain House Regional Mobility Hub. It's just slightly north of I-205 at the Mountain House Parkway interchange. And this is to complement the proposed future Valley Link station in Mountain House. This is basically everything but the platform itself. This is the parking lot, the kiss and ride, the places for transit, all on the, I guess you would say on the left side of the image is the mobility hub. So next slide, please. And there's 12 of these projects. I'm going to try and go as quickly as possible. The next project is from the city of Stockton. This is the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard Rail and Roadway Reconstruction Project. So this is essentially an underpass just south of what we call the Stockton Diamond, which is an interchange of two railroad crossings, or two railroad lines. And so there's a huge project going on at what we call the Stockton Diamond, right? And so what this is trying to do is take this opportunity to also reconstruct this underpass. And so next slide, please. All right, so the city of Tracy. The city of Tracy is actually proposing a new project as well. Initially, they had submitted, back in January, as you saw, a separate project. It was the Coral Hollow Road 580 interchange project, but as you're aware, they received $41 million recently. Again, congratulations to them. And so they had an opportunity to resubmit. They submitted the I-205 Mountain House Parkway, International Parkway interchange. Again, this is right by the Mountain House Mobility Hub project. So this should complement the commuters traveling in that area, along with all the truck traffic that's going to be traveling on International Parkway to all those distribution facilities. So next slide, please. This is another new project. This is from San Joaquin County. This is the Stockton Metropolitan Airport's Taxiway D Connector project. So in this project, we have the runway at the Stockton Metro Airport, and then we have Taxiway D. Right now, there's only one small connector between the two. And so when that goes down for maintenance or maybe there's traffic on that connector, that causes challenges at the airport. And so they're proposing a second connector to alleviate the congestion or when there's maintenance. So as they grow and increase capacity, this is going to be very important for their operations. Next project. Also from San Joaquin County, this is from their Public Works Department. This is the Grant Line Road Realignment Project. This goes from the City of Tracy city limits to 11th Street. And what makes this unique or very important for the region is that it bypasses the unincorporated community of Banta. And so it eliminates some railroad crossings and also bypasses an elementary school that's right in the middle of town. And so this is an important safety project for those folks in the community of Banta, but also for all the warehouse facilities that are being built on the, I guess, east side of Tracy. So next slide, please. And then next we have the San Joaquin Council of Governments, our mega region investment strategy, which composes 2 projects. One of them, as you can see on the left side of the screen, is our State Route 99-120 interchange connector. Right now, as you're aware, Phase 1A is under construction. That's that kind of purple line there. And then Phase 1B is what we're seeking funding for, which is the green portions of the project. Additionally, again, going along with this mega region investment is we're seeking funding for the I-205 Managed Lanes project. And so that's our project that we're proposing. Next slide, please. The next project here, as we come on the last few projects, is the San Joaquin Regional Rail Commission, their North Lathrop transfer station. It's off Lathrop Road in the city of Lathrop at the Sharp Army Depot. And so that's pretty self-explanatory, but basically it's a new station to so that folks can connect on their new service that they're proposing through their Valley Rail program. So next slide, please. And then we have the San Joaquin Regional Transit District partnering with United Cerebral Palsy, and that's their vehicle replacement project. They're replacing 9 what we call cutaway buses. And so RTD purchases the buses, and then the United Cerebral Palsy, they use to operate the buses to pick up their clients. And so, next slide, please. Lastly, another returning project. So we have the Stockton East Water District's Balota Weir Modification Project. It's on the eastern side of the county. And so you have some images or a photo of what it looks like now. And so they're proposing a lot of improvements. This is essentially a water management and fish project. So these are the 12 projects that we're proposing in the program of projects. Next slide, please. And then also just a reminder for all those that are attending the One Voice trip to save the date. We're expecting Sunday, May 18th to be the travel day. 19th through 21st is meetings with Thursday, the 22nd, traveling back home. Next slide. And back to our recommendation. So it is to approve the 2025 One Voice program of projects and the updated federal legislative platform. With that, I'll ask support staff if you could take down the slide deck, and then I'll be available for questions.
Questions for Mr. Joel?
Comment, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Joel, you mentioned Union and 120. I travel that all the time. In the beginning, drivers were kind of confused, but now it's working really well. So I hope we are successful to get Airport
Louise.
and Louise approved.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other members have any comments, questions? Well, Joel, thank you so much, but I'm assuming that we're going to have a nice package, not what we saw this staff report. It's going to be a glossy and very admirable. I don't know how far that goes, but if we can have that package, that would be nice.
Absolutely. We are looking at multiple prototypes and determining what's the best option at the moment, actually.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you, Mr. Joel. Do we have any public comments on this? Okay. Hearing none, let's move right ahead.
I'll move to approve the proposal.
Second.
We have the first and we have a second.
Mayor Kenjo,
Yes, ma'am.
Mayor Ariola,
Yes.
Councilmember Craig,
Yes.
Supervisor Dollywall,
Yes.
Supervisor Ding,
Yes.
Councilmember Ingo, Councilmember Enriquez,
Yes.
Mayor Fugazi, Councilmember Ponce,
Yes.
Supervisor Rickman,
Yes.
Mayor Singh,
Yes.
Mayor Sue,
Yes.
Councilmember Zuber.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. All right. No information item for this period? Is that correct?
Under the discussion item, Mr. Chair, I'd like to introduce Chadi Chasbeck. He is a vice president for Kimley Horn. Chadi, can you come up to the podium? Chadi is our project manager and consultant in the development of the iTool 5 Managed Lanes Environmental Impact Report. I wanted to have Chadi give the board a status of where we are on the project, as well as a preview of some tolling policy that this board will be directing to staff and the consultant team as required in the environmental impact report. So Chadi, please take it from there.
Good evening, everybody. Pleasure to be with you tonight. I'm here to give you an update on the project and talk some very basic tolling concept tonight, as Diane mentioned. It's a high-level presentation. We'll have an opportunity to ask a lot of questions during the process. One of our goals tonight is to actually give you a chance to give us questions and ask us to come back with more information. This is going to be one of many, many more conversations we're going to have about this project as we embark on delivering the 205 project. Again, my name is Chadi Chasbeck. I'm with Kimley Horn Associates. Let's see if it's going to work. All right, so today's goal is to update you on the 205 Managed Lane project. This is the first presentation that this board has had on the tolling, so we're going to introduce the tolling as a concept. It'll be first of many that we're going to have together on this project and on tolling. It's an information item only. There's no decision being made tonight, so I just want to emphasize that. And really, it's an opportunity for you to go ask us questions and ask us for what areas you want us to come back with more details at future presentations. We'll do a deeper dive in each of the topics that we're going to cover tonight at future board meetings. Go next, please. All right, so one more. So the 205 project has been going on for a while. The project purpose is to provide more reliable travel time along the 205 corridor for commuters between Central Valley and the Bay Area. The proposed project will facilitate more efficient goods movement as well as people's movement through the corridor, and will facilitate increased multimodal transportation opportunities, including carpooling and ride sharing through the corridor and transit as well. Next, please. So it goes without saying, what happens if we do nothing? Congestion will get worse in the corridor. The average travel times will increase in both directions, both morning and afternoon peak periods. Increased backups and further delays to both people's and goods movement. And I would add, with more congestion, potentially more safety concerns for the corridor. Next, please. So now let's dive into what we're proposing on 205. 205 we've been studying the corridor for a while, as I mentioned. We're looking at, we looked at various alternatives over the last couple of years, trying to identify what potential improvement we can make to the corridor. The project limits are from the I-5 205 to the 580 205 junctions, roughly, plus or minus. We have looked at multiple analyses, and we've landed on two alternatives that will be carried into the environmental document that I'm going to explain what they are in a minute. But also the project involves upgrades to 3 interchanges in the corridor. These are the 205 Tracy Boulevard interchange, the 205 Grant Line interchange, and the 205 MacArthur Boulevard interchange. So those interchanges will also be seeing significant improvement as part of the project. We'll go to the next one. So we've landed on 2 alternatives that we're studying for this corridor. One is to add a lane in each direction to 205 from 5 to 580. This lane will be a carpool and a toll lane in each direction. And The second one is to convert one of the existing lanes to a carpool lane / toll lanes in each direction. So two alternatives. You're going to notice on this cross section, there's the widening on the outside on both of these and the median transit corridor in the middle. Basically, even in the convert lane option, we're planning on widening the freeway to the outside, so we create a future space for a transit corridor in the middle in the future to come in and be either a rail or a bus lane or any kind of a transit accommodation in the future. So we're pushing to the outside to create more space for future transit accommodation in the corridor. So on the alternative with the lane add option, we end up with a total of 4 lanes, and then what we call in transportation the auxiliary lanes, which are the lanes that connect from one on-ramp to the next off-ramp. So those are the auxiliary lanes in between interchanges. They're not true lanes, they're auxiliary lanes. So you'll end up with a total cross-section of 5 lanes between the interchanges, and through each interchange will be a total of 4 lanes in each direction. Under the lane conversion option, we'll end up with 3 lanes, 2 general purpose and 1 a carpool and HOV lane. We'll go next slide, please. We've been doing a lot of traffic studies on this corridor. As you can imagine, there's a lot of traffic that to be analyzed. So we've analyzed both of these options, and we've been working with Caltrans team on getting that analysis reviewed and approved by Caltrans. And we're also working with other Caltrans functional units to obtain approval on the geometric design of the project. We just started the environmental studies on that, and there's over 20 studies we're going to do on this corridor. And to name a few, air quality, noise, and community impact assessments would be some of them, but there's others, biology and cultural resources and visual impacts and many others. I would add and highlight also that in today's environment, regulatory environment in California, we also have to study the impact of vehicle miles traveled, or VMT, which means when you add another lane to the freeway, people are going to tend to drive more, and you induce vehicle miles traveled. I'm sure you're going to hear a lot more about projects like this because that's a regulatory environment coming out of SB 743 that was passed a few years ago. Every project that adds lanes to freeways, whether they're carpool lanes or general lanes, will have to go through something called a VMT mitigation strategy, which means you have to look at ways to reduce travel on the freeway and ways you can encourage people to use other modes of transportation besides solo driving. And every project in California in this environment is struggling to find a way of how to mitigate for that. But it is a requirement we have to go through, and in collaboration with our partners at Caltrans, we have to go through that process. So more on that in the future to come as well to the board for discussion. But that's a new requirement that every transportation project is dealing with in the state. And I will go next slide, please. I will give you an update on where we are on the schedule, and then we'll open up for Q&A. So as I mentioned, we're currently doing the traffic analysis for this corridor. There's also, because we're proposing a toll lane, we have to prepare a traffic and what's called a traffic and revenue study to make sure financially this project is feasible. So that's coming later in the year. We're also working on all the technical studies, both on the design front and the environmental front. So those are ongoing. This is all going to lead to eventually a draft environmental document that's going to be put out to the public for circulation and comment. That's anticipated to be in 2026. And it will be an opportunity also for a public meeting for the community to come and engage with us. And that's not going to be the only time where they engage with us, but that's a major milestone on the schedule. And then after we get all the comments, we're going to pick a preferred alternative out of that circulation. And that preferred alternative gets carried into the final environmental document, which will get approved by Caltrans as the owner of the facility. So that approval is anticipated to happen in 2027. It looks like a long time from now, I know, but there's a lot of technical work that needs to happen to get there. So I will stop here on our 205 update. I'll let you ask some questions. The second part of the presentation is going to be more on about the tolling itself, so we'll keep that for the second part.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
as a friendly reminder, we do live stream these meetings, so it would be helpful if you have a question, board members, to be closer to the microphone so your voice is picked up and people on the live stream can hear. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam CEO. Do you have any official questions? I do not, Chair. You do not? Any question from the board? This is a very important project. Yeah, you should have questions and no questions?
We have one right here. Chair.
Thank you for the presentation. So I did notice with the two potential options that both seem to have that middle transit lane. I want to make sure that as we're pursuing various mega regional priorities, that the possibility of Valley Link coming through there, is that a possibility for both of those options? Are we taking consideration of that? Are we working with them? Do you have any information about that?
Correct. Good question. We've coordinated with Valley Link early in the process to establish what the width of that future transit corridor, and we believe that space would be adequate for future trains to come through if Valley Link chooses to come into the median of 205 in the future.
Okay, and then secondly, my last question is, it looks like the completed document would be June 2027. So do you anticipate beyond that, what kind of time frame do you anticipate if funding is successful by then?
Correct. So I'm glad to see it in the earmark list earlier in the presentation. So if funding becomes available and we continue to move forward, there will be a couple of more years of design and then about 2 to 3 years of construction. So the earliest would be open to traffic would be 2032 to 2034. That's pending a lot of discussions around what happens during the process, and then funding being available for the full thing. So the other funding we need is for construction as well, which is an expensive project, as you can imagine.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Other board members? Okay. But I see on your slide, I see Caltran logo. Is Caltran leading this project or what?
Correct. So Caltrans is the CEQA lead, NEPA lead for this project, for this document, because they're the owner-operator of the freeway system. So they own the facility and they have the ultimate approval authority on the document. SJCOG is the sponsoring agency, so they're, we're the sponsor of the project, but the ultimate approval authority under law would be Caltrans.
So are you carrying Caltrans along? Are they involved? Are they involved?
Yes, they're reviewing our documents. They're partner with us on the projects, and they're working with us on the details.
Thank you, sir.
Sure. Okay. Ready to move forward? Okay. All right. Let's go next part. So the next part is really to talk basic elements about tolling, and we're going to start to say why we consider tolling on these projects, on these corridors. So let's go to the next one. Toll lanes generally, with the pricing of the lane, allows you to manage how many people get in and get out of the lane, so that you can ensure that those lanes are operating efficiently during rush hours. Without the tolling element, the pricing element, everybody gets in, and then you lose the benefit of having another lane because it becomes a parking lane. So one aspect of it is to introduce the tolling concept so that you allow to manage the traffic through that lane. It also offers a choice. You don't have to pay to use it every time. You pay to use it only when you need it, when you want to use it, and the days when you're not in a rush, you don't have the incentive, you don't use the lane. And data shows from other toll lanes around the country that not everybody uses it every day. They use it only when you need it. You have a child you want to pick up from daycare, you're late to a meeting, you have a, somebody's going to charge you time because you're late, then you can use the lane. The days when you're not in a rush, you don't have to use the lane. So it's a choice, not a mandate that you have to use it every day. It does allow more reliable travel time for anyone who uses the lane. So because under federal law, we're obliged to maintain the lane at 45 miles per hour. So the price would be adjusted by up and down to make sure that we're maintaining 45 miles per hour in that lane when tolling is turned on. Also, it allows us to use the toll revenue to operate and maintain the corridor in good and excellent condition. So fixing potholes, repairing infrastructure, you have some kind of a revenue stream to help you maintain the corridor rather than going back to other sources of revenue. The net revenue that's being generated from the lane can also fund an investment in other corridors. So any future investment in the corridor could all be funded from the net revenue that gets generated from the toll lanes. Again, under the SB 743 VMT requirement, these are expensive mitigation measures, and without any other funding source, it'll be hard to meet the state mandated requirement in order to mitigate for the additional lane. So that additional stream of revenue would help you pay for some of these VMT mitigations instead of having to go back to another source of funding as well. And then when you open another lane in the corridor, if we had to open this lane as just a simple carpool without any tolling, it'll be hard to fill the lane up with enough people carpooling because it won't operate at its maximum capacity. It could carry up to 1,600 vehicles per hour, for example, but you're not going to have 1,600 vehicles per hour in just carpool using the lane. So you'll end up with a lane that's kind of sitting there kind of empty if you don't have the tolling. So the tolling allows you to allow people who want to use and willing to pay to fill up the lane to its maximum capacity, so you can maximize the use of that extra pavement you're going to put on the ground, especially in earlier years. As people start to get used to more carpooling and they want to take advantage of it, the carpool numbers goes up, and then the number of paying customers would go down. But the initial years, you're going to have a lot more people paying than the number of people that are going to carpool, so you can use that capacity to its maximum. And tolling is just really a tool in the toolbox of managing congestion. It's not the only one. There's other things that you need to implement to manage congestions. Tolling is just one tool in the toolbox that we use to manage congestion. Now, let's look at the next slide, please. If you look historically, this is data collected over the years. The last data point we had is 2020, about 5 years ago. But you can see in blue the number of carpool lanes, particularly in the 70s and 80s when everybody wanted to jump into adding carpool lanes. A lot of people built carpool lanes. But in the last decade or two, you've seen a lot more people pivoting towards the toll lane concept instead of the carpooling because of what we call the empty lane syndrome. People aren't carpooling enough to fill the lane to its maximum. So a lot of these, what used to be a carpool lane is being converted to toll lanes in the country. And that's why you see that orange bar increasing over the years. Next one. And in California, we're not alone that's faced with that problem. Many of your similar agencies across the state have looked at tolling as a tool. Today, there are a total of 12 agencies in California who run toll lanes and run operations. And some of them are in rural counties like yours. For example, Riverside and San Bernardino have toll lanes now. So there's 6 in Southern California and 6 in Northern California who have live toll operations. And then our neighbors to the north in the Sacramento region just started their own program on the I-80 through Yolo County that they're going to start tolling that corridor as well. And they formed a new toll agency called CARTA. So the brand new agency just formed about in February of this year, or February of last year. So that's we are in totally, we have about 870 tolled lane miles in California. We have about 12 million transponders of the fast track distributed, about 6 million fast track accounts, and overall, combined together, these agencies generate about $1.4 billion in revenue for infrastructure, and all of that money is mandated to go back into their corridors for future investment. I will stop here to allow some questions.
Questions, board members?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
So the hot lanes, I'm very familiar with them back east. So
Yeah.
In California, have we started seeing some data in terms of the cost benefits of the hot lanes yet? You've said they're in quite a few places, which I hadn't even really realized. But do we have enough to really understand the benefits associated with the revenue benefits associated versus the admin costs associated with it?
Correct. From data I've seen, first the benefit from a travel time saving, there's a lot of data there that shows that the lanes have helped travel time, and they've actually achieved the goal of providing a travel time saving when compared to the general purpose lane next to them. So that, you could take 580 here just over the hill or any other corridor, that's generally true across the board. In terms of net revenue, are they generating enough money to pay back for themselves the operation and maintenance and any debt that they took on to build the lanes? They have been successful to do that as well. So they are generally in the black, not in the red, when it comes to their revenue stream that they're generating. And all of that money is going back to investment in corridors as well.
Thank you.
And a perfect example is Alameda CTC committed some of the total revenue to Valley Link to help fund that. Other questions?
More questions?
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
It's another revenue-related question. So I would think there would be some projections. So with the existing traffic count, what would the annual projected income be? And then what would the expected maintenance costs be?
That's a question that we're going to answer later in the year. It's coming up actually in the presentation. So we have not started on the traffic and revenue study. That's part of the ones that we're going to do this year for 205 specifically to generate that. And we do have a rough number on the estimate on the capital cost, how much it's going to cost to build the lane. But we're still going to have to do the operations cost and the maintenance cost and also generate the revenue. So that's happening later this year, and it'll be a future board presentation.
Thank you.
Other questions?
No, any more questions?
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Maybe we'll put that slide back up. So we'll go to the next one, please. So when we talk about toll lanes, it's not just pavement and a gantry and that's it. Toll lanes is really a program. You got to think of it as a program because you're maintaining a lane and you're maintaining operations and you're also dealing with a lot of other aspects of the project than just a simple, highway project. So elements typically that are included in a toll program would include equity, which is top of mind for a lot of people. How do you give discounts and what type of discounts do you give to low-income and disadvantaged communities so that you encourage them to use the lane when they need it and it doesn't become a burden? How easy it is to access the lane, both from physically driving in the lane, but also from getting a fast-track toll tag, for example. Where do you get that one from? And is there a barrier for you to get a tag? And other aspects, ease of understanding the use of the lane and how do you understand how to use the lane and how do you pay for your toll. Obviously, there's a lot of public outreach that's going to be needed and a kind of education campaign, especially in a county that has no other toll lane, that, there'll be a lot of education needed in terms of how that would work. So there'll be a work with the community over, several years to get that up there and get that information out. If there is any desire to use the toll revenue to enhance transit in the corridor, then that also becomes part of the program and how you integrate transit with the toll lanes. There's a lot of discussion around technology. What technology do you use and how do you use the technology to implement tolling? And then another big one is how do you spend the net revenue? And it becomes a board decision as well. Any net revenue generated after you pay for your operation and maintenance and any debt, then the net revenue needs to be decided on how you spend it, and that will be a future board decision as well. So, and this is few of many elements we can talk about, but just understand it's not a simple highway, general purpose lane, go add pavement, and then we're done. This is a program that we're going to implement on 205 if we go down the path of a toll lane. So what we include today, if we go next, please, we have a little bit of a preview, if you want, of what's going to happen in 2025. So let's go to the next one. Part of our scope to deliver is something called a concept of operation report, or CONOPS. It's a federally mandated document we have to prepare for FHWA to approve anytime you're going to put tolling on the interstate. And this is a document that we prepare that goes through review with Caltrans and then eventually with the FHWA to get it approved. This is a high-level document. It's a policy document, basically, that says, here's what we think, how we're going to do tolling on 205. And here are the general framework, general guidelines of how what's going to happen. That document becomes the basis of any future tolling policy you're going to make a decision on. Are you going to allow people to go for free if there are two people in the car or 3 people in the car? Are you going to give them a discount or no discount? Are you going to require them to carry a transponder or not? Are you going to use the money for other things? So there's a lot of other tolling policy discussions. Are you going to implement a violation policy enforcement? What do you do about somebody who doesn't pay the toll or cheat in the lane? So these are a lot of future discussions that's going to happen. This CONOPS document is going to just set the stage for that future discussion. So it's really a framework. You don't have to make every decision right now, or even in parallel with the EIR. These are future decisions, but we're setting the framework for what's going to happen in the future. And eventually, when all of these decisions are made and the tolling policy is in place, we go down to writing business rules and writing contract documents with the vendor who's going to actually do the tolling and all these other details that come in the future. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit later in the presentation. The other document we're going to prepare this year is the traffic and revenue study that we've mentioned a couple of times already. So those are things we're going to work on this year, and we'll bring you some more information on these documents later in the year. Let's go on the next one. So I wanted to give you a preview of what's involved in a tolling system. A lot of us drive on the freeway and see a bunch of gadgets on the side of the road, and we don't know what that happens. So I would simplify it in 4 different components. You've got your toll tag, your fast track toll tag. That's what you use to declare I'm in the lane. That's what declares who you are or identifies who you are as a user. There's a roadside toll system. All these gadgets you see on the road would read your toll tag and would know, okay, this is Shadi, and he's driving at this time of the day, and he crossed under this gantry, and the price at that time was X. So that's the roadside system does all of that. That information gets sent to a back office. It's basically like a software and an accounting system that will take your information from the road and will look up your account, and because you open an account with a toll agency, and that account gets charged the right amount of toll. And then if you don't have a toll or you don't have an account and they read your license plate and there's no record of you, then they send you a bill, and if you don't pay it, it becomes a violation, and that's a whole different process. So 4 different components in a very simple way that involves a toll system. Next one. So the roadside system, again, there'll be sensors on the road. It's monitoring traffic both in the toll lane and in the adjacent lane. That's what sets the price. So as more people get in the lane, and we're approaching that 45 miles per hour, and things are starting to slow down, the price is going to go up in order to discourage more people to get in, so you can maintain that 45 miles per hour in the lane. So that's that monitoring part. That's what's going to monitor the system and feed into the pricing algorithm. The sensors on the road are going to detect who you are. They're going to see, okay, I read this toll tag, or I read this license plate. It's going to look up who that toll tag is associated with, identify the account holder, and then create a transaction, because they're going to see I crossed the toll point at this location at this time. Price was this much. Therefore, that's the price I'm going to pay, or I'm going to charge that in that account. We'll go to the next one. That information, like I said, is going to go back to a back office, and this is a broader term that I'm explaining. So the back office is 3 components, if you want. One is the account management side of things. This is all the, who holds my account, my financial information, who generates my report, generates my audit report, generates my performance reports. All this stuff is sitting in that back office system. The one in the middle is the customer service center. This is a place where you would walk in and say, I want a toll tag. I would like a fast track toll tag, or I want to dispute a charge, or I want to open a new account, or I want to change, I lost my toll tag and need a replacement. This is where you deal with the toll system to say, I want to do a transaction with you. And then the one on the right side is basically an operation center. This is where all the feed from the roadside come into one center. We have TVs and cameras. All that comes together. This is where everybody is monitoring. This is where, if there's an accident on the freeway, they're gonna see it on the camera. They're gonna call CHP or call tow truck and respond to incidents. So this is where all the live monitoring would happen. And Caltrans does that already today on the major freeways. So it's not something new. All of that together is called the back office, if you want, operations together. So roadside, back office is the basic 2 categories. We'll go to the next one. So another decision in the future, if we finish the EIR and we need to go down into the toll road, we're going to have a discussion around what does SJCOG role be in all of this. So you could be the tolling authority and you could do all of that from A to Z. You own the roadside, you own the back office, you own the customer service center, the TMC. You could decide, no, I'm gonna just do the roadside, but I'm gonna contract the back office with another sister agency that's already doing it. That's another option. Or somewhere in between. There's a wide variety of options that we can discuss in a future presentation that shows you what to do. To give you how things play out, as this tolling business has evolved over the years and people don't think differently. It's not necessarily consistent. The Bay Area, to an example, decided that the back office and all that, that slide you saw, MTC, BATA, the Bay Area Toll Authority would be that back office, and everybody's gonna kind of plug and play into it. So Alameda CTC, which runs the 580 and 680 express lanes, they manage that roadside, and they send that transaction to BATA to process the information. So your account, your fast track account, is always with BATA. Same thing with like VTA down in Santa Clara County, San Mateo County, everybody else. They manage the roadside, they own the equipment, but BATA is the back office for everybody in the Bay. Southern California, on the other hand, because they did it individually, everybody created their own back office. So what you see on the other side is that Orange County Transportation Authority have their own back office. Riverside has their own back office. San Bernardino, the newest one that just got added to the toll family, if you want, they decided that on I-15, they're gonna use TCA as their back office. So they're kind of starting to pivot towards the BATA model, the Bay Area. But as you can see, there's a wide range of options here for you to decide down the road on this. And then the last slide I have is about kind of a toll authority. So if we can go to that one, please. So in the earlier years of tolling in California, when Alameda CTC did the 680 corridor, I was the project manager on that. We had to go get a legislation from California to say, Alameda CTC, you're going to have the toll authority written in law to toll on 680. So it used to be every agency would go get their own legislation. AB 194 passed a few years ago, made that delegation to the California Transportation Commission. So now California Transportation Commission has the authority to provide that authority to other agencies to toll the lanes. So now there's a formal process. You don't have to go through a formal legislation. It's already in the law that you have submit an application to CTC, and CTC will give you the authorization to toll. So the question for the board in the future, would SJCOG be that tolling, would be the entity seeking that tolling authority on 205, or do we create another entity or another partner agency? That comes with its own pluses or minuses, which we're going to discuss in the future. But just know that we have to go through an AB 194 process to get tolling authority on 205 in the future. There's a lot to unpack here. I know it's a lot of information, but I wanted to give you kind of a high-level overview, and then we can go into questions. And this was the last slide.
Questions for Mr. Shari? No? Okay. Thank you. I'm sure we'll see you again.
Yes, we'll be many. Looking forward to it. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you. All right. Moving right along. No question for Mr. Shari. Any public comments? Okay, let's see. No informational items either. So I guess it's Shia's report. Thank you, board members. It's always an interesting. I've never been given any opportunity to share a report before, but this is kind of thank you to Madam CEO. So SJCOG received some good press coverage over the past few weeks, I believe. I think I saw one. I don't know if anybody see anyone there about the 4.13 million federal funding for the I-580 Coral Hollow Road project. And I'm sure Supervisor Rickman and Mayor Ariola should be happy to hear that. CBS Sacramento was one of the leading agencies, and the Tracy Press did positive stories for a change. Thank you, Supervisor Rickman, for representing the SJCOG in talking about the project with the news media, and I think I've seen the mayor of Tracy to some of these social media posting. Thank you so much, guys, for that is what representation is all about. That funding is a one-voice victory and motivates all of us for the upcoming one-voice advocacy trip. We just need, according to Supervisor Dean and all the presentation, we just need to modify the way we package ourselves this time when we go to Washington, D.C., because we know what we're about to witness there. Let's just be humble a little bit. So congratulations also to Mayor Singh for his election to the National Association of Regional Council Members of Directors. Really? That's a big title.
I didn't have enough things to do.
Ah, you do. Thank you. What do you do in that area, actually?
This is basically all of our, I went to this in DC now 2 weeks ago, and it represents a lot of nationally, all of our COGs. So this is not just, we've done stuff here within the state, but this is nationwide.
Thank you so much. That is awesome. Thank you, sir. So it is vital that our region has representation on the board of these national organizations. It gives us a voice on the national level, and that is always important. Do you want to speak something, sir? No? Okay. So the voice, which is the one voice that we always like to visit and stuff like that, I don't know about the new guys, but it's an interesting thing to see how the system works. Thank you. So from there, we go to the council members' report. That is my report. Any other members wants to share something?
Chair?
Right there.
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Enrique.
Yeah, I just want to thank all the presenters today, and I know for me I didn't have any questions because I know for you, sir, you said that you'd give more updates later on. But it's great to know when it comes to tolling, right? It's a tool from the toolbox, but if it's a tool that works and it's helping to create revenue, I think it's a great positive. And I know my colleagues and I will be looking forward to seeing all the different pros and cons along the way. But I also just want to give a huge shout out to Diane and the team for inviting myself and Councilmember Ponce to the Tesla factory earlier this week. Just another opportunity for us to learn about sustainable energy practices and get a behind-the-scenes look. So just want to give thanks to the team for that.
Thank you, Councilmember. That is very important. For all informational purposes, you all know that we do have Tesla in Lathrop, and we do have a Tesla in Washington, D.C. at this very moment. So we always have to be careful. We need that money coming. We need the projects to come in. So please, let us put that into perspective. They are both working together. So we just, okay? Thank you, Councilmember Enrique. Anybody else? Oh, yeah,
Hey, just real quick, I just want to let everybody know, as a member of the Valley Air Pollution Control District, we're having a Valley Free Smog repair event at the Lodi Grape Festival this Saturday from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m., and you can check it out on valleyair.org, their website, and get more information. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Supervisor Rickman. I have a question for you, but I won't bore you with my questions.
You got to make an appointment.
Yes, I will.
Thanks.
I will definitely do that. Thank you. Yes, I will definitely. Yes. Ex-official board members report. Our regional transit, Mr. Gary Giovanni, I think he's gone. Okay, he left. Okay. Caltrans Dixit, Madam Grace.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, everyone. Just a couple of updates for us tonight. To better assist our partners, our Caltrans Division of Local Assistance, the Office of Environmental Compliance and Outreach, is providing virtual office hours to local agencies as well as other Caltrans employees every second Wednesday of every month, and they just started this in February. And the intent is to provide our partners an opportunity to ask specific questions on environmental compliance and outreach. Our headquarters experts will be on the call. And this is all it's specifically to help process preliminary environmental studies for transportation projects. And the team can be reached via the meetings. It will be a Teams meeting, and the link to that meeting will be available. We'll make it available to SJCOG as the next one starts up. And the US DOT has issued a call for applications under its Port Infrastructure Program that assists in funding eligible projects for purpose of improving safety, efficiency, or reliability of movement of goods through ports and international connections to ports. The available funding for this is $450 million, and the deadline to apply is April 30, 2025. County, state, city governments, and Native American tribal governments, federally recognized ones, are eligible to apply. And lastly, I do want to share that we have the I-5 pavement rehabilitation project that is currently under construction. We are planning what we call a 55-hour closure starting on March 14. On March 14, that's a Friday, and the closure will start at 10 p.m. and it will reopen March 17, Monday morning at 5 a.m. And that's not for the main line. It's for the southbound I-5, 8 Mile, and Hammer Lane on-ramps. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Madam Grace. Port of Stockton, Mr. Bill Treasures.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to share with you what kind of activity we had at the port in February. We handled 246,000 metric tons of cargo. Month over month, this is a pretty good increase from last month, January, and about a 7% drop from February 24. There's three basic types of commodities we handle, and I'll give you them in our descending order. Dry bulk is our largest category. That contributed 125,000 metric tons. And items that we process, larger down to smaller, is cement slag, sulfur.
Mr. Bill, is your microphone on? Your microphone.
Sorry. Did you catch what I told you?
I did. That is Supervisor Dean saying
All right,
you. Yeah. I want you to start out.
Well, our largest category is dry bulk, and that's about 125,000 of our 246,000 metric tons. And the leading categories are cement slag, followed by sulfur, and then fertilizer, and then lastly, mineral sands. Another category is liquid bulk, and that contributed about 60,000 tons, and that's mainly sulfuric acid and liquid fertilizers, and feedstock and renewable fuels. The third category is general cargo, 21,000 metric tons, and that's predominantly rice and secondarily steel. We had 18 vessel visits during the month, which was 3 more than last month, which was a little bit of an improvement. So the port is very busy, and thank you. Any questions, I'd be glad to take them.
Any questions from Mr. Bill? Thank you, Mr. Tracer. We appreciate all the efforts the port is doing. I'm glad you are doing more increase on a monthly basis. That is good. We can take that to one voice with us too. that information is quite important. Okay. Executive Director's Report, Madam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, I wanted to thank Chatty Chasback with Kimley Horn. He's a great expert on managed lanes and tolling with experience in the Bay Area. So I really appreciate the deep dive on the I-205 managed lanes project and tolling, as well as a big thanks to Eric Loston from HB Strategies. I really learned a lot from what he said, and I am looking forward to working with the team and the delegation in May for One Voice in DC. A couple of quick remarks. The San Joaquin Council of Governments did get coverage on the Highway 99 120 Connector Phase 1A project that is under construction. I wanted to express our appreciation to CBS Sacramento in covering a story that talked about a major milestone on that construction project, which is taking down the Austin Road overcrossing, or the Austin Road Bridge. It will come back in 18 months, and we do understand that that is not only a significant piece of travel for commuters and the general public, so there are detour routes, et cetera, to help in navigating travel in that corridor. But we appreciate the media spreading the word on that significant piece of construction work. While we do have alerts and everything that is related to a construction job that we're leading, it is always helpful to spread the word on that. On another topic, the California Councils of Governments, which we are a member of, is a state agency of COGS, and Supervisor Robert Rickman is the SJCOG representative on CalCOG Board of Directors. They're holding a leadership forum next week, which Supervisor Rickman and staff will be attending. I will be leading a panel, or a part of a panel, to talk about SB 375 reform. And Kim Anderson, our Deputy Director of Planning, is also going to be on a panel to talk about new tools for affordable housing. There will be an awards ceremony as part of this event, and we submitted and put our hat in the ring for the Stockton Mobility Collective, the electric bike share, electric car share project. So we're keeping our fingers crossed to see what happens from the award ceremony. But I wanted to express my appreciation for the chair, Chair Kinjo, and Vice Chair Fugazi, who will be joining us in that award ceremony. Finally, I wanted to say that staff took to the executive committee an item of discussion about the next steps related to Valley Link and the discussion item from last year in October. For new board members, Valley Link was agendized in October to talk about their funding needs on the project, and it was a very detailed discussion. I think that the takeaway from staff and the comments from the board members were that there were a lot of questions on Valley Link, and my view is questions are great. They set the table on information gaps that this board needs in order to make informed decisions. So when staff took the item to the executive committee directed staff to reach out to Valley Link staff, the executive director and their team, to invite them to come back for a formal informational presentation with a clear outline for this board. I've already done that, and Valley Link staff is looking at either coming with an informational presentation at the March board meeting or the April board meeting. The kind of roadmap in terms of the information Valley Link will be presenting, which was dictated by the executive committee, was to talk about a path forward. Not the many years and history of how we got here in terms of working and partnering with Valley Link, but what is the path forward? What are the essential information pieces related to where the initial operating segment is? When will construction start? What are any funding? What are the funding shortfall and gaps on that? And then also comprehensively talk about the hydrogen facility proposal in Tracy. Same thing, what is the timeline? What has been achieved, the status? What are the funding gaps on that project? Including the other item for Valley Link, which is the EIR, the Environmental Impact Report, for the Mountain House to Lathrop segment, which is phase 2 of the project. And finally, we will be asking ValiLink to talk about the projected ridership of the service on the initial operating segment, as well as any conceptual operating costs when the service is running, to Mountain House. The Executive Committee also encouraged new board members or any existing board members who want a refresher of the history to just reach out to ValiLink staff directly for a one-on-one so that we can concentrate the board meeting when they come with a path forward of information on the various items for the project. That concludes my report, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Any question from the board member concerning the executive board request? No question? No. All right. Madam CEO, we're missing one board members. Is it one or two? You still want to take the pictures?
No. At the beginning of this board meeting, we had a full board, and now because of some time commitments, we lost a couple of members, so we'll forgo a picture. We'll try it again next month.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I should have done it. So, okay.
Ding's leaving, so you better.
Oh, yeah. Meeting adjourned.